Well, this video was inevitable. If you've been following my content for a while, then it's probably no secret that my favorite character in Final Fantasy XIV is Estinien. And over the course of these last few years, I've been asked a couple of times about how or why I came to love Estinien so much, especially since prior to Endwalker, he always seemed like he was such a stick in the mud. He was always so serious, and he was always so grumpy, and he was always so stinky. While I explained my reasons for my fangirly hyperfixation in the past, it was never done with my thoughts, like, written on paper. So it was always kind of like this jumbled, off-the-cuff ramble, and not anything really coherent. I'd mentioned that I wanted to do a video surrounding this topic, but I never really got around to it because I was always busy or tired or busy tired. And, well, a certain someone held me very, very accountable these last few years until this video was finally made. To which I say, hello, Pooja. Yes, the video is finally done. If you're new here because the YouTube algorithm brought you to my corner of the universe, then hello! My name is Raptor-chan, and this is going to be a video focusing entirely on why Estinien is one of my favorite characters of all time. So strap yourselves in. This is gonna be some kind of journey. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the story, I have to start at the beginning to provide some context. And that beginning actually starts in two other MMOs that were not Final Fantasy XIV. The first being Final Fantasy XI. I played it briefly when I was younger because I was obsessed with the summoner job, because I was introduced to Yuna in Final Fantasy X, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to be a summoner like Yuna. However, I found out later that the Dragoon job let you have a pet dragon, and in case it wasn't obvious, I fucking love dragons. So my dreams of becoming a summoner like Yuna were put on the back burner because I became obsessed with the Dragoon job, and that was made even worse when I was introduced to Kain Highwind from Final Fantasy IV. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy XI would not be able to retain my attention beyond level 13, as, at the time, I was playing a second MMO, World of Warcraft. WoW kept me entertained for well over 10 years. I played a week or so after launch, and it was my big comfort game at the time. And wouldn't you know it, that those 10 plus years of WoW would ultimately shape my entire perspective on an edgy masked elfman in a game I would play later in my life. Yeah, I didn't see it coming either. You see, I was, and still am, an enjoyer of stories and narrative-driven games. I like adventure and mystery and theorizing of character arcs and pondering the deeper themes and meanings behind each and every bit of story that you can find. And if you love stories and lore as much as I do, and you were a WoW player during Mists of Pandaria and onward, well, you know that we got the really, really short end of the stick, to put it mildly. So while I was still playing World of Warcraft, I signed up and got into the beta for A Realm Reborn back in 2013, which ultimately led to me buying the game and playing at launch. I went in choosing the Lancer job because I wanted to be a Dragoon, and I fully expected the story to not at all matter in any capacity. I had low expectations, I had no intention of getting hooked on any character. All I wanted to do was enjoy the journey of a fresh and new MMO while looking at my super hot OC in the Dragoon armor, because, like, get down, that armor is really freaking hot. And thus did I excitedly arrive in Kurthis Central Highlands to unlock the Dragoon job, and thus did I finally meet Estinien. Who is this Sasuke-looking motherfucker? What the fuck? Yeah, I didn't care about Estinien at all. I I thought he was gonna be the Sasuke character and left it at that. Yep. I loved the armor, and I was screaming at all the Ishgard and Dragoon lore, but otherwise I didn't think any of it would stick or matter. Heaven's Word didn't exist yet, and for all I knew, I was gonna kill this armored Sasuke and it was gonna be the end of it, because all I had for an MMO story reference was 10 years of WoW. And if you wanted to enjoy the WoW story, you kinda had to make up your own via RP. So I cared more about the Dragoon lore to fix up my own character's RP story than I did about this random NPC that in my eyes wasn't gonna be anyone important. Oh, how wrong I was. If I didn't think twice about Estinien when I first met him, then when did I go from indifference to... Well, I can tell you it wasn't immediate, that's for sure. It took literal, real-life years, and I will get to that part of the story in a minute. But my first opinion of him did start to change during A Realm Reborn, namely the level 45 Dragoon quest, Double Dragoon, where the player learns the truth behind Estinien's traitorous acts against Ishgard, which, turns out, weren't traitorous at all. You see, when you first begin the Dragoon questline at level 30, Estinien is framed as a thief and a traitor to his country because he stole the Eye of Nidhogg, an ancient Ishgardian relic. Your job is to bring him to justice, and you accidentally become a second Azure Dragoon in the process, sparking curious interest in Estinien. He disappears and is absent for the next 3 quests, and you're left with more questions than answers. But in the level 45 questline, you learn that Estinien is actually not as cruel as he was initially painted to be. Estinien's mentor and father figure Alberic tells the tale that Estinien lost his home of Ferndale to Nidhogg's brood roughly 20 years ago. In the present day, Estinien tells us that he stole the Eye of Nidhogg after suffering a vision, not unlike our very own Echo, that revealed Ishgard, his new home, could suffer the very same fate by the very same dragon. This scene was important for shifting my opinion of him. Though vengeance ultimately drove him, Estinien's motive was placed in fear of loss. The man lost his home, his family, his future to the fires of Nidhogg. Ishgard, despite all its problems, was now his home, and it was being threatened. He was acting out purely on emotion, something that Dragoons were not supposed to do, lest they be consumed by their draconic powers. Such behavior from him prompted me to wonder what happened to Estinien during his earlier years. The Dragoon questline shows us that up-and-coming Dragoons face a multitude of trials and dangers to achieve their rank. Their very power is steeped in dragon blood, and they constantly teeter between sanity and pure madness on a daily basis. It's also cemented early on, both in the MSQ and the Dragoon questline, that Ishgard as a whole is filled with incredible hate for dragonkind. Anyone who is suspected of being a dragon or a dragon sympathizer and found guilty is sentenced to death. You either hate dragons, or you die. Estinien had been a child who survived a slaughter, and despite being taken in and adopted, his hate and want for vengeance was held tightly onto for 20 years, which told me that his anger wasn't at all addressed, but nurtured. His suffering, his grief and pain, was weaponized by his very people. And surprisingly enough, in Heaven's Ward, that very thought I had was proven to be a canon training method for Dragoons. One of the guild leaves that you can do within Ishgard proper explains the method of forcing young orphans to relive their trauma until nothing but a rageful husk remains. Yeah. So here Estinien stood before me as a product of war, and one who fully intended to sacrifice himself to save his home and people. He acted out of fear and selflessness to protect those from suffering the same fate he did. True, he still wanted to kill Nidhogg to avenge his family, but he also desired the Dreadworm's death to protect the many innocent lives residing within Kurthus. Even if it meant that the rest of Ishgard would paint him as a villain in the history books for stealing the eye and acting outside of official authority, he didn't care. He wanted to stop the pain, both his own and for all others who hurt too. That was when my opinion of him started to change. It was a small change, but a change all the same. I no longer saw him as the Sasuke trope character. He had depth and nuance to him. He wasn't an emo edgy boy who would betray someone for any simple reason. He was a hero lost in his own darkness and pain. The cards were stacked against him, yet he fought against his fate while readily accepting that he could die at any given moment. He left me curious about his story arc, and I wanted to know more. But, as we Dragoon players know, at level 50, we fight Estinien to help him regain control of his powers and emotions, but after the fight ends, he vanishes and the questline comes to an ambiguous close. I remember when the questline ended, I felt bummed. I was still wounded from my time with WoW, so I fully believed that I would never see a continuation with this storyline, and if I did, it would be exclusive to whenever my level cap was increased, so it would be like a Dragoon exclusive storyline. So I would push the very thoughts of Estinien and his story out of my mind, believing that that would be the last time I would ever see him, because that's what WoW would have done, and why would 14 be any different? I would go on to fight the Ultima weapon and watch the cutscene of what would become Gaius's iconic monologue, and gradually forget about the questline altogether as patches slowly began to release over the next 2 years. And then, March 31st, 2015. The release date for the patch Before the Fall Part 2. You! This motherfucker showed up in the MSQ out of nowhere. I remember being in voice chat at the time with a bunch of my FC members, and my gasp had people thinking that my reaction was actually toward Emmerich, because, I mean, at the time, your girl had a crush on Emmerich. But in reality, it was towards this new mysterious character no one had yet met. Except me. Other than my friend Pooja, I was the only other person in the group that had leveled Dragoon, so while everyone else was being introduced to him for the first time, I, meanwhile, was flabbergasted and stunned that this man whose ass I kicked 2 years ago stood in front of me and even gave me unique dialogue. Then he had the gall to start talking about Nidhogg, the very dragon that he was trying to stop during the Dragoon questline. And then he shows up again after the Steps of Faith, like he was gonna be a main character in the story. Everything I knew about narratives and MMOs up until that point had been grabbed, crumpled up, thrown into the trash, and lit on fire. Estinien was a side character. He had been gone for 2 real-life years. What the fuck was he doing in the MSQ? That doesn't happen. Why are you here, dude? Needless to say, my hyperfixation had a new target, and it had locked onto the self-sacrificing, vengeance-seeking idiot without my knowledge or my say-so. I was in a chokehold before I even hit Heavensward, and I only realized it when it was too late. Heavensward finally releases, and I'm as giddy as can be. Due to my own RP character lore, I was obsessed with learning more about Ishgard and the Dragoon job. I was also really excited for the dragons, of course, and the brand new places to explore and the new plot to unravel. Everything was so new and fresh, and I couldn't wait to dive straight in. And lo and behold, though I should have seen it coming, guess who shows up again in the main story and becomes a permanent character from then on? Yeah, this guy, haunting me wherever I go. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, that still rings true even today. By this point, I'm starting to recognize the symptoms of a fangirly crush. He had a very lovely voice.
You might also consider a more direct approach to ending this conflict.
He had that really sexy armor. He began showing a more playful and teasing side to his otherwise very cold disposition, and even the shield around his emotions began to crack, showing us more and more sides of him that he otherwise kept tucked away so he wouldn't lose control of his power again. Even his repeating beef with the Azael was well written, with Estinien questioning her blind faith and naivety, with his stoic realistic approach on the war and the slaughter of innocent people.
Your words will not reach her now, and we have not the time to wait for her to gather up the pieces of her shattered faith.
Though snippets of anger escaped him in these moments, he slowly began to listen more and come around to her view.
I lost my family to Nidhogg's flames, and 'twas with fury in my heart that I took up the lance. Every blow I struck in the name of vengeance. We were not so different, he and I.
I will not judge you for your deeds. I have not the right. Too many innocents have perished in the name of my greater good.
He was even willing to set aside his differences with her if it meant Ishgard's survival.
Come then, Lady Iceheart. Let us write the final chapter in this damnable war.
And when he was faced with the truth of Ishgard's past, it didn't shake his cause or his focus. Learning that Nidhogg could not be stopped with peace talks, he was even further determined to defeat the Dreadworm so the war could finally end.
When Nidhogg dies, this war shall die with him.
Yes, vengeance for his family's murder was ever present on his mind, but his actions continued to align with that fear and desperation to stop the fighting and the pain. He was the direct approach type of man who wanted to solve a big problem by going directly to the problem's source. He was not the thinker. He was simply the lance in which the party could unleash when a problem needed violence. The barbarian to a group of wizards for my D&D players out there. The more I ventured into Heaven's Word, the more complex and fascinating Estinien became to me. By the time we hit the Dravanian Forelands, I had already deemed him my favorite NPC and left it at that for most of the quest lines he was involved in. He was just the hot, mysterious soldier idiot, and I had no other further attachment toward him otherwise and fully expected him to simply vanish after his portion of the MSQ was done. You know, like I had believed 2 years ago. You'd think I would have learned. And then it happened. The cliff to which I stood upon the edge of, knowing that one more step would cause me to fall into the dark abyss below. The point of no return. The all-consuming. The hyperfixation all fangirls dream of, but also simultaneously dread. The ultimate favorite character. These types of characters surpass all others. They sit upon a throne of ultimate favorites, where merch, fan art, fanfics, you want it all, but it's not enough. It's glorious when your favorite character is one of the main cast. It often means they get the most out of the fandom, but for the fangirls who choose a side character, it's dangerous. Side characters are often ignored, the fandom a desert with no substance. You either make the content yourself, or perish. And the worst part about liking a side character, they have a higher chance of permanent death, or vanishing with no chance of returning to the main story. I'm often a victim of the side character, and I knew that if I took one more step, Estinien would be another that would destroy me. In the level 56 main quest, He Who Would Not Be Denied, you reveal the truth of Ishgard's bloody past. Emmerich, furious that the Archbishop has hidden this information from the people, marches off to face his father directly.
A divided Ishgard will not survive.
At this moment, as everyone is discussing how best to proceed in this situation to avoid further conflict, Estinien speaks up and says something that causes me to take that final step.
Bastard or trueborn, he is our nation's best hope. If the Holy See dares to threaten him, I shall lead the charge against the Vault myself.
Despite being the Azure Dragoon, the highest honor of Ishgard, despite traditions, despite his own possible upbringing, Estinien chose loyalty to his friends over everything else.
What ails you, friend? Are you wounded?
True that Emmerich is Ishgard's best hope, but he's also Estinien's closest friend. Estinien could have been loyal to the Archbishop, but he wasn't. Estinien, who should be the poster child of Ishgard, gave absolute zero fucks for Ishgard's politics and laws. And it was that loyalty to his friends that cemented my demise. Estinien was the ride-or-die type, the Garrus Vicarian of Final Fantasy XIV. This man would go to the ends of the earth and back for his friends, commit a felony for them, he would kill for them. The rules he followed was a personal code. His law was his friend's word and survival. He didn't trust easily, but when that trust was gained, it was fully and wholly given without question. he was filled with so much anger and hate, but that anger and hate was steeped so deeply with love for his friends and the fear of losing them. That one line of dialogue changed the trajectory of my life. Everything that happened after that point only served to add fuel to the fangirly fire. Though, I will say, for those that might be wondering, the end of the Heavensward story had me quite distressed for 8-ish months, because I had thought we were going to have to kill Estinien, thus fulfilling the side character prophecy of he dies or is written out of the story. Thankfully, the former doesn't end up being the case, and the latter, well, I had believed going into Stormblood I wouldn't see him again and Heavensward would be lost to time and forgotten, yada yada yada. But I am happy to report that I eventually did learn my lesson once the Stormblood launch trailer dropped and the deep wounds that had been left in me from playing WoW all that time had finally begun to heal. 14's story was its own unique experience, with continued growth and expanding upon various themes that were established early on and character arcs, and the plot mattered. The plot mattered, and Estinien was here to stay. I was overjoyed when it dawned on me that my favorite character was going to live, and that he was going to be relevant in some capacity, no matter how small. I was going to get to see him randomly pop up out of nowhere to do something Batman-esque before vanishing again. And that was so exciting for me. It made the story all the more enjoyable because I never knew when this man was going to appear and what new hot heroic thing he was going to do. This is why my reaction to him appearing in Shadowbringers was so squeaky. I never knew when to expect him, and I always played the game not expecting to see him at all. Not because I didn't think I'd ever see him again, but because I'd be so engrossed in the plot that he'd jump scare me every single time in all the best ways. And of course, getting to spend so much time with him in Endwalker and the patches that followed was the greatest gift of all time. It showed me how much he had been able to open up and be himself after everything he had gone through. His life had been nothing but war and grief, and now he could travel, see the world, try new foods, experience new things, and feel emotions without fear. It made me so happy that this character who had been living purely in survival mode and feeding on his own anger could finally live his life. I mentioned earlier too that Estinien had changed the trajectory of my entire life, and it's true. I became a content creator, a streamer, and a VTuber because of him. Many people who find my little corner of the universe find me because of Estinien. I've even been recognized by players within Final Fantasy XIV itself as that one Estinien girl, and honestly, I'm honored. So while he also helped me learn over time that the plot of 14 wasn't going to be anything like WoW's, he also kinda had a hand in some personal growth of mine too. I used to be embarrassed and shy about how strongly I could love a story or a character or how engrossed I could get in a fictional world. And for a while, I suppressed those feelings and only ever showed them around a very select group of people. Those squeaks that so many of you had come to know me for, I used to try to hide that. Sometimes I even go back and I watch my earlier videos on Shadowbringers, and compared to now, I can't believe how quiet I used to be. Now I upload my feelings for a bunch of people to watch on YouTube. It's kind of wild to think about that it all kind of started with him. One fictional character just did all of that, and, well, here I am, making a video about it. And that's why Estinien is my favorite character in Final Fantasy XIV, and one of my top favorite characters of all time. This man snuck into my life out of nowhere and changed so much for me while having one of the coolest character stories of all time, in my personal opinion, of course. I mean, he's infused with alien dragon blood and thus is an honorary dragon. And I mean, as a dragon VTuber, man, that's so hot of him, to be honest. Anyway, thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I know it was a long ramble about one fictional dude, but I wanted to share my love for Estinien and explain how it all came to be, since he's one of the reasons why I'm even a content creator in the first place. Plus, I kind of wanted to try out a new video format, and I mean, if you want to see more videos like this, please let me know in the comments! Is that how you do it? Would you like to see more videos about rambling on my favorite characters? And if so, which ones? There's quite a lot to choose from. Or if you'd like to see some kind of ramble video about story diving and plot theorizing, I love doing those too and can consider making some if it's something that people want to see. But yeah, that's it. I still have no idea how to close out videos. I don't think I'll ever learn. Stay safe and healthy out there, and love your favorite characters. Bye!